Welcome again to the another session of these Genesis 1 through 11 series. A number of years ago, I hate to say how many, it was about over 30 years ago, I was on business in Washington, D.C. I had a series of meetings there, and I had an old friend there that I was staying with, and we had some conversations in the evening time. He's not a scientific type, but we went over some of these laws and the implications of these basic laws of physics. Well, the next day, I had a break in my meetings, and it was near one of the major universities there, and so I went over there to visit. And during this time, he was working on with some students there, and so he disappeared for a while. This is a little before lunch. And he says, well, I've got a luncheon appointment for us. And I said, well, that's nice. So we went over, only it wasn't for lunch. We went into one of these classrooms at the university, and it was empty, and it was kind of a rotunda type of a deal, probably 100 seats in it. And we sat down in the front, and there wasn't anyone. I said, what's going on? And he says, well, I've got a man I want you to talk to. He'll be here shortly. And in the door comes this fellow. He must have been about 65 years old, maybe 70. No, he's probably closer to 70 years old. And we stood up and made introductions. And it turns out that he was a physics professor. And I have a feeling that he was the head of the department. Well, this friend of mine had gone over and hustled him. And we were going to have a little conversation for lunch. And he said, well, I want Mr. Penny to explain to you these laws and some of the implications. He says, I don't know enough about it, but I wanted to have you who know a lot about physics examine these things and give me a critique. And I thought, man, he put me on the cooker on this thing. This was no lunch. I was being served up for lunch. So I began to explain. There was a chalkboard and everything. And he and the professor sat there, and I laid out these two laws rather quickly. I didn't want to act like I was treating this professor as a freshman in college, so we stepped fairly lively into the thing. And after I'd drawn up the two laws and superimposed them, all of a sudden this professor stood up and he says, I know where you're going with this. And he says, I don't like it. And he walked out of the room. And I hadn't even gotten to my conclusions yet. And but he's smart. He's a smart fellow. And so this friend of mine, he turned and he says, I can't believe this. And about this time, this door opened up and this professor stepped in and he says, you're going to force me to teach something that I do not believe. And I said, well, these are the basic laws. These are the most basic laws of physics and of science in general. And about that time, the door, he says, I'm not going to do that. You're not going to force me to teach the things I don't believe in. And he slammed the door and walked out. And I kind of sat there kind of stunned. I never had that type of reception. And my friend, he said, this is unbelievable. He says, I thought you were just exaggerating on the importance of these two laws and their implications. And I said, no, I mean, they're well known, but a lot of people have not connected the dots on them. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to study these two basic laws that we have developed in the previous sessions and see what their implications are as far as the origins of the universe. We're not going to get into the origins of life at this point. What we have here is a question that's raised. Are we looking, as we've pointed out before, at a cosmic accident, or is this a divine creation we're looking at when we look at the whole universe? Naturalism would teach us to believe that we're looking at a cosmic accident in time and space. The scriptures present, no, this is a creation. This is a product of a divine supernatural agent. The biblical creationism is what you have in contradiction to the naturalism. There are two histories of the universe and of life. However, history is matter and energy interactions occurring in the past. And the one thing that you know about history, and especially of physics, is that those are fixed. They're not subject to revision. You can't go back and rewrite them. The past is the past. And those events took place in a certain sequence. Not what I thought about them or what you thought about them or anyone thought about them. They're fixed and they're written in the stone of time. And no one will change those or erase those. So when we look at history, when you say naturalism has its story and biblical creation has its story, only one of them is the truth, or neither of them are the truth, but something did take place in that sequence of events. And what you and I think about them is not going to change that. Creation by God of the universe and life in 6 days, less than 7,000 years ago, are recorded in Genesis 1-3. It's in stark contrast to naturalism's origins of the universe and life of billions of years ago, and life beginning about 1 billion years ago. History did not allow for both the Genesis 1-3 creation and naturalism to be true. They can't both be true about the origins of the universe and life. Contrasts. Let me take you down through some of the contrasts that are very sharp between these two stories of the past. Biblical creationism, you have a universe created by God. Naturalism, you have a godless universe. There is no God. It all happened by time and chance, and it arose out of nothing. In creation, biblical creation, you have a creation less than 7,000 years ago. In naturalism, you have a universe that began billions of years ago. Biblical creationism, you have God creating a universe from nothing. In naturalism, you have the universe also from nothing, but it's from a singularity point that's smaller than the single atom. The whole universe came out of that. And before that, there was nothing. In biblical creationism, you have a universe created in 6 days. In naturalism, you have the universe exploding into being billions of years old from a reverse black hole event. In other words, black holes, as they teach, is that everything disappears into them. Matter does. It's like a giant vacuum cleaner. In the Big Bang Theory and the contemporary view of the universe is it came out of a reverse black hole event and is still coming out of that. That's why Einstein and others feel that the universe is finite. It can't be infinite if it came from a singularity point in time and space. See the contrast between the two? Some more contrasts between biblical creationism and naturalism. Biblical creationism would say the universe and life were created complete, perfect at the beginning, in order. Naturalism would teach you that the universe began with no matter, no life, no energy, and no complexity. In biblical creationism, you have a universe and life began perfect, and then it begins to die into disorder. The reverse of that is true in naturalism. The universe became disordered and became more complex with time. The formation of celestial systems, solar systems, galaxies, and everything became more complex. And life is the same way. It started off with random atoms and became more complex in time. These are reverse of each other. One starts perfect, goes to disorder. The other one starts with disorder and comes to high levels of complexity. Biblical creationism teaches that the laws of science were determined by God at historical events, and we saw those in Genesis 1 and 2. You have the first law of science, conservation of matter and energy. On the 6th day it was finished creating. Nothing was created since then. We have the same number of atoms, the same amount of matter in the universe, and the same amount of energy that we had 1,000 years ago, or we'll have 1,000 years from now. In any event, the universe never creates or destroys any. And also we have the second law came about when the relationship with God and His creation was broken, and the universe began to disintegrate. The same amount of matter and energy, but it becomes disordered. And that came about by the fall of man and the judgment of God. In naturalism, the laws of science happen by chance. Why is the first law true? Oh, it just happened. Why is the second law true? Oh, it just happened after the Big Bang. There's no rhyme nor reason to it. There's no explanation of the origins of the laws of science. Biblical creationism, all physical phenomena is by rational laws of science that God ordained. He fixed those in order. And it always does the same. For instance, you take a bird and it flies in. It's never had any courses in aerodynamics, and it has no runways to take off from, and yet it lands in stall conditions following exact laws of aerodynamics. How does it do that? How did it learn that? It's following laws that we don't even understand. And yet, we think that these laws, as we pointed out, beginning in the 1500s, men begin to understand that these things aren't because the wind doesn't blow because there's a god of the wind. Or the sea doesn't stir up because Neptune started it and created a storm. That God created rational laws to run the universe, and if those laws change, would that bird be able to land? No. He'd crash into the branches if any bit of it changed. And they're complex. Flight's very complex with birds because they're changing their airfoils. They use their wings for propulsion as well as lift. And they come in and the universe always does the same thing. The rational laws are never violated except in the case of miracles where God intervenes. And we saw that in the case of Christ when he walked the face of the earth. He broke these laws, which showed he has the power over nature as the creator. In naturalism, all physical phenomena have atheistic explanations. They don't understand why the laws are there. They don't even think that they're always rational. You get into quantum physics, and they think that if there's not a mind to perceive it, there's no universe out there. And it doesn't happen by exact laws. It happens by statistical time and chance. Events take place. There's no order in their system. In biblical creationism, you have the universe in the future will be destroyed and replaced by a new heavens and earth. This will take place before all the stars burn out in the galaxies and the whole universe dies. In naturalism, they feel that the universe continues forever. In biblical creationism, you have life created by God in 6 days, less than 7,000 years ago, in a complete order, including man. In evolution, you believe that life arose by naturalistic evolution by time and chance. Started with disordered things and rose to what we have as the human order of humans as being the end product of this evolutionary process of random mutations chosen by natural selection and kept from going back down. In biblical creationism, you have God has eternal purposes for the universe and for life. In naturalism, there's absolutely no purpose for life or the universe. It's a cosmic accident. There's no design or order or why this is taking place. And life has no purpose. In biblical creationism, life on the earth has a unique place in the universe. In naturalism, life on the earth is not unique at all. There are probably billions of other civilizations like ours somewhere out there. The whole purpose of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, in which we pumped tens of millions of dollars in, listening out there to get some signal that indicates there's life out there. They assume that this isn't unique here on the earth, and that we're not unique. None of us are unique. And the world we live in is not unique, or the universe is not unique.